And just let me know whenever you guys are ready. Okay. Perfect. I will go ahead and open it up.
Hey everyone, we'll just allow people to join, so we'll probably start about 5 past the hour, so just bear with us 5 minutes or so, and then we'll give it a start. I will just give another 2 minutes, people, and then we'll start. So thanks everyone for joining. We're up to about 150 participants. We'll just give it until 5 past the hour because people are still joining at a fair rate, and then we'll give it a start. Cool. So welcome everyone to the June Virtual Health Tug. I noticed there are plenty of people around from the globe, so it's not just friends in America. We've also got people on from Europe. So thank you for those that are joining us instead of the heat wave and the football being on. So it's most appreciated to have everyone, and welcome. So if I can get Chris working. So just as introductions first off, and I would ask my co-chairs or co-colleagues to come off and introduce themselves. So your healthcare organising committee, Nicole, do you want to do quick introductions?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nicole Lohr. I've been, co-chairing this Tableau Healthcare User Group with Simon, Lindsay, and Mark now for about a couple of years, thanks to Jonathan Drummey, who's going to be speaking with us later today. Pass it on to you, Mark.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Mark Conley. I've been co-leading with everyone here for a little over a year now, and based out of Chicago, and really, really excited for the presentations we got lined up today.
Cool, thank you, Mark. And unfortunately, Lindsay Betzendahl can't join us today, but Lindsay's Tableau's Master, works in healthcare and has been on the user group committee now, I think, for over a year. So Lindsay sends the best regards to everyone. And I'm the token one from across the pond in Europe. So I'm Simon Beaumont, Tableau's Master and Ambassador, and have been supporting the healthcare tug now since Jonathan passed the baton over to Nicole and I a few years ago. So welcome, everyone. And this is where I really regret not using PowerPoint, so I apologise if there's any techie errors with my slides. So in terms of today's agenda, we have two speakers. First up, we have Ella Worsdale from the UK. Ella leads a NHS trust and has been using Tableau now for a number of years. Ella is a Tableau ambassador and is also chair and organiser of two tugs in the UK, the Northwest Tug, which was happening this morning, and also the Health Tug in the UK. Ella will be providing a talk about relaunching Tableau to give it the wow factor and showcasing the portal that she has recently used to embed Tableau within. And then comes the godfather of the virtual health tug, so Mr. Drummey, who will not need many introductions to you all, but Jonathan is not just a Tableau Zen master, but one of the Hall of Famers, has been around since day dot, actually set up the virtual health tug, and I think many of us probably owe Jonathan a debt of gratitude. So Jonathan, welcome back, and we are thoroughly looking forward to you sharing Tableau relationships in practice. Just before we hand over to Ella and Jonathan, because I know they're the ones that you want to listen to, not us, but we just wanted to share a couple of community highlights. So first off, we always do this at the beginning of every virtual tug, just to showcase the community and the vibrancy of the healthcare visits that are out there in the Tableau public community. So here's just a selection of the best healthcare related Tableau public visitor days since we last all met. So Anastasia recently did one about gender equality. We also had the Operation Fistula, looking at one of their particular healthcare needs, and also Urban Institute doing distribution of COVID vaccines. They are all available on the Tableau Public Visitor Day Gallery, alongside numerous other visits that will hopefully inspire you with what can be done in Tableau. So we'd thoroughly recommend checking it out, and congratulations to all the healthcare authors that are featured on the Visitor Day Gallery. For those of you that may not be aware, and if not, why not? But the IronViz feeder is now open. So IronViz is Tableau's annual Viz competition, which normally takes place at in person at Tableau conference, but this year, as we will know, it's going to be a virtual conference again in November. So the IronViz feeder, there is only one this year. It's not like previous years where there were three. There is just one feeder, and it is currently open until early July. The theme this year, and I think it was deliberately done to offer us all an opportunity for a bit of a boost and positivity, is Viz what you love. And that is deliberately vague in terms of choose what you love and make the most of it and tell your story. Don't forget that it's judged on analysis, storytelling, and design, so keep that in mind when you're developing your content. But if you do want inspiration, Andy Cockbury has been hosting a number of webinars recently and sharing a number of blog posts. There's also all the previous entries available on Tableau Public's website, including the ones that were shortlisted in previous years. Personally, I had the honour of being on stage virtually last year, and I honestly would say it's one of the best experiences of my life. So I would encourage anyone to participate. Even if you don't get through to the final, you really will learn a lot throughout the way. So the website link is there. Just go onto the Tableau Public website and you'll learn how to participate, any advice, tips and tricks. But also remember, the community is there for you as well. So reach out to anyone. I'm sure they'll be happy to ask. And last but not least, and with deep sadness, as a healthcare organising committee, we wanted to recognise the sad passing on the 26th of May from Lakshmi, who was a Tableau Tableau ambassador and a tug leader in Asia. Lakshmi unfortunately passed away due to COVID and leaves behind a wife, 1-year-old child, and a mother. And Tableau, in honour of his memory, has set up a fundraising initiative. So we just wanted to take a moment to remember Lakshmi, be grateful for all he did for the community. But if you do want to contribute, please do so via the link below, and we all know it will be gratefully received. So on that note, we will then just quickly remind everyone that we do have a Q3 tug, which is due to be scheduled in probably it will happen, I'd have thought, around September time. If you would like to present on that call, please do reach out to Nicole, Lindsay, Mark, or myself. We are actively looking for speakers, and I promise you it's not scary. We will be here every step of the way to help you through it, and hopefully you'll learn a lot in terms of from Ella and Jonathan about how to do it properly. So on that note, I will hand over to Ella to take the screen and share with you her portal journey.
Thank you. Let me share my screen once Simon stopped sharing his.
Oh, sorry, Ella. And just for everyone, yes, this recording, the user group will be recorded and it'll be available on Tableau's YouTube site within the next week or so.
Okay, hopefully you should see some slides now.
Yeah, all good.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. So yeah, I'm going to talk about our Tableau journey and where we're at the moment. So, a bit of an introduction about myself. I think Simon just basically told you everything you probably need to know. But yes, I work for the NHS. I am the head of information for a specialist mental health and learning disability service. It's based in the east of Manchester across 5 boroughs. Called Pennine Care. I've been working in the NHS for over 16 years and kind of progressed through the organisation and now head of information, so kind of leading the data strategy as well as the team. I recently renewed my desktop qualified associate, which was pretty tough going, to be fair. I had to resit it, so there is a blog if you're going through that pain, then you might need it. I do run a couple of tugs, as Simon says, and I'm proud to be an ambassador. And yes, I am fully obsessed with Tableau, like probably quite a few of you are, and do walk around with a sign that says Datalicious over my head quite often. A bit more about Pennine Care. So as I said, it's a specialist trust. We cover a large patient population across multiple sites. A lot of the services are not hospital based. They're delivered in the community and in different clinic settings. So very vast and a high proportion of employees. So that's a bit about Pennine Care. So in terms of my Tableau journey and the journey that we've been on in Pennine Care, I first spotted Tableau at a conference and had a 10-minute presentation. I was blown away at the end of 2014 and kind of envisioned that this could really help us to change the way we presented data back to our decision makers in Pennine Care. We didn't have any BI tools. We just used SQL Server reporting services and sent our reports in Excel. So very kind of manual. The reports were very dry because we were just kind of on a kind of treadmill, churning them out once a month, and we had a high demand for ad hocs, but a repetitive demand for ad hocs. So it was pretty tough going in them days. When we spotted Tableau, felt that something was about to shift. So we did a mini pilot during the end of 2015 that was massively successful, bit of an overnight success in terms of automating all their routine reports and making them available via the Tableau server. And we had up to 50 operational managed access and then with more than we used to provide them from a reporting basis, because we wanted to kind of give them all extra information to help them make decisions in terms of being able to drill it down to patient and staff level, so they could really see the benefits of using data and getting it right. So there was a shift in the ownership of performance, the ownership of data quality, and a real shift in people wanting to access data. So the pilot went really well. We moved on to an implementation and rolled it out across the whole trust. The trust was actually double the size at that point, across different, we had community services as well as mental health. So about 5,000 employees. We rolled it out to about 800 operational managers at that point. Again, automating it all, kind of routine reporting, and starting to really get into the value added reporting. I guess since then, has been 4 years now. We've embedded Tableau as the main business intelligence tool. We've got lots of data coming from lots of different systems, both clinically and corporate systems. So we've got patient data, as well as staff data, financial data. We've got instance data around any instance that go on in the trust, as well as other data. So getting a really a triangulated view, an integrated view of what is going on in our services and with our patients and with our staff. So we've got a great valuable data sets that people can access. I guess what's happened over the last 4 years is we've turned into creating so many dashboards, because it was so much easier than it was to create reports before, and we're inundated with different types of reports and different ways of looking at stuff. So our dashboard just grew and grew and grew. But we spent a lot of time kind of embedding Tableau, and we've done a lot of time learning. We also got stuck in terms of technology. So during that time, we've also been looking for funding to make sure that we've got enough funding to kind of keep going with the technology. So the last few years have been about embedding and learning. But over the last year, we've recognised there was a massive need for improvement. So we wanted to revitalise our Tableau environment within Pennine Care and really get people bought into using data to add value alongside a kind of data strategy. So we're at the revitalised stage. So pre the relaunch, which I'll talk about in a bit, we, as I said, Tableau is the main reporting tool. As the trust has slightly shrunk in the last couple of years, we've got 400 active users, but probably over 800, 900 actual users. But over the last few months before we relaunched, we had 400 actively using it, whether that's monthly or daily or weekly. We've got over 400 workbook dashboards, so a lot of dashboards, some duplications, loads going on. We've grown our Tableau development and data visualization skills over the last 4, so really embedded Tableau as a professionalism within the team. So we've got a framework to grow our team, making sure they've got the right skills to make the data accessible. So really kind of grown that. We've got, as I said, multiple systems feeding into our data warehouse and into Tableau, and we have influenced other areas, the NHS and social care in the UK, to use Tableau, or showing them the benefits of what we've done. And then we've got other areas in our patch that kind of use it, and we're able to share our ideas, which has been great in terms of our learning and be able to really engage with other areas of the NHS and really kind of make sure that we're doing the right thing with the data for our patients. So that was pre-relaunch. Just briefly how Tableau is used. So it's used for assurance reporting. So it is used to support our kind of board reports and our committee reports as a routine tool. We're still at the point where we do kind of have the reports and they are extracted into PDFs. That's one thing we want to improve, but they are available interactively if people need them. We're using it for situational reporting. So live as it can be, I suppose, reporting. It's definitely been a valuable tool during COVID. It's given us live data out of our COVID collection system, so we know exactly what's going on in terms of our COVID cases and our how it's affecting our staff as well. It's been a valuable tool for understanding the situation. It's also used as a management source. We've got staff data in there, and we're rolling it out as making sure our managers really engagement is something that's really useful. We're also using it to do it for exploratory analysis, so really making the most of the technology to really maximise the data in Pennine Care. So it's used for a variety of purposes. And the outcome to date, as I said, has been really positive. We've improved data quality. We've got ownership that's sitting more operation service than the people that should be owning the data. The confidence in the data has grown over the last 4 years. As we embarked on Tableau, people could get underneath it, so they felt that it started to get better. We've had additional funding into the department and into Pennine Care to support the rollout of Tableau, to support the embedding of data. People really understand that there's a benefit to having a data culture. Our data literacy across the board has improved, both internally in the team as well as people actively using data, far more than they were 5 years ago. And the data culture is massively improving. Why did we need improvement? So we've done a number of kind of user feedback sessions. We've done surveys, and we've kind of gone out and met with people to understand exactly what their experience of Tableau has been. And one of it was, so they didn't find it very accessible. As the platform has grown and the number of dashboards has grown, people really struggle to find what they need. When we went live with about 20 dashboards to start with, people could see which ones they should be using regularly, but it's just grown and grown and grown. And some, depending on your access level, some people have got access to so many dashboards, they're not sure exactly what they should be looking at and when. And they also didn't find the dashboards very intuitive or the search capability. So there's kind of a lot of feedback about them. They're starting to kind of disengage slightly with Tableau. There's content gaps in terms of there's not an easy kind of board or ward to board view or team to board view. So people couldn't exactly see KPIs running through the organization to exactly see what was going on. So there's some content gaps. The demand was growing for data, but we can't keep up with it. In terms of engagement at a senior level, there's not many senior managers from a certain level actually using Tableau directly, self-service wise. They're still relying on other people to kind of take data out of Tableau, whether it's screenshots or downloads, and send it to them via email or via a meeting. So we wanted to kind of shift that. And we've had some technology infrastructure challenges. So we've got stuck on version 10.4 of Tableau for pushing 3 years, which has been a massive challenge in terms of being able to keep up with some of what we needed to do at the speed we could do it, because we kind of got the gaps in Tableau. And also as being a Tableau user group leader, seeing all the upgrades and all the extra features I've had over the last 3 years have been quite hard for me to kind of watch, go, that would really solve this problem, and that would really solve that problem. So that's been really difficult, and trying to keep up with that and work out all that. So a massive leap. So technology challenges and not having a development environment to kind of play with as well have been a limit. So there's definite improvements needed. So we went with a four pillars of improvement approach to really pin down exactly how we needed to improve. So we weren't just looking at kind of Tableau, we were looking at kind of all elements of the kind of the journey around Tableau and how people use it and how people engage with it. This is loosely based on the Tableau blueprint, but trying to make sure that it was accessible and easy to understand from non-Tableau people and non-kind of data people. So really kind of making the language a little bit easier to digest. So it does cover pretty much what the blueprint covers, but just in a slightly different tangent, not every single thing. So we've gone for the 4 areas. So in terms of technology, we wanted to make sure it was as flexible and fit for purpose as possible. So making sure we had the best infrastructure to support all the demand we were experiencing. We wanted to make sure we had a guided platform to make sure it's really accessible for our decision makers. Otherwise, we're not going to get the support we needed. We wanted to make sure that it was also monitored and maintained. So when we build a new dashboard, is it getting used? Is there any dashboards that aren't being used, and working out why not? Is it because they need improving? Is it because they need promoting? Or is it because it's just not used, not needed anymore? So a routine process of really keeping an eye on, and also keeping an eye on who's actually engaging with any of Tableau and making sure we've got the right users or not using it in the way that we should be using it with the frequency. We also wanted to review the kind of data safety and the information governance and the GDPR rules around making sure people have the right access to the right information at the right time, whether that's more access or less access, but making sure it's really relevant. So we wanted to pin down that to make sure it's safe. We wanted to make sure our dashboards were as good as possible on our analysis. So we wanted to make sure it's efficient, to make sure people could get to the insight as quickly as possible. So they're not looking at the dashboards and really struggling to understand it. So in that sense, we had to make it efficient. We also had to make it really intuitive and accessible, to make it really easy to use. There's so much data people need to do, and there's so little time for people to kind of engage with data, then that was the challenge. So making it accessible, making it relevant so people are seeing what they need to see, and we're kind of pushing out what is relevant for them. So making sure it's based on their role, the kind of stuff they need to do. And we wanted to make sure we're built in co-design. We've always tried to kind of collaboratively build stuff, but we wanted to pin that down into a better process of really working with our users to get what they needed. We also needed to look at the skills, both of the analyst teams and the people developing the Tableau dashboard and our data sources and our data sets, and making sure they're the right skills. So looking at a framework to make sure our skills in the department we're developing in a way that supported our end users. Looking at our consumer skills in terms of data literacy and digital skills to make sure they're equipped to use Tableau and to use and understand data. And move towards a role-based framework. So we're really prescriptive about who should be using what data when. So as a manager, what are our expectations? We're far more prescriptive as an organisation about what they should be doing. And we wanted to improve our engagement. So we wanted to make sure we've got a community. We want to make sure we're communicating in the right way and sharing everything that was going on, so people really understood what we were doing and why we were doing it, and providing a better support model. So the 4 pillars are about really making sure we've got a rounded approach to making Tableau land well and making sure that data is firmly embedded in the organisation. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail about what we've actually done in each of them pillars. So from a technology point of view, finally, we upgraded from 10.4 to 2020.4. So I think there's 12, 15 upgrades of Tableau since 10.4. So many features that I've been watching from the wings that we've had to, that we've upgraded. So that was kind of a big element of the improvement project, was getting migrated from one Tableau server to another and having an environment that we could kind of rationalize our reports and get it to where it needs to be. And we've had to do a big learning cycle internally to understand what the new technology is, both from desktop and a server, because huge changes. So a massive upgrade. We've implemented a new Tableau portal. One of the challenges was around accessibility. So we wanted to make sure that when users logged on to Tableau, that they knew what they were doing. They got everything kind of fed up to them in a way that was really accessible. So we chose to implement the Tableau Portal, which is supported by the InterWorks, which is the InterWorks curator that we've purchased, which works like a website, but basically allows us to dish up the dashboards in a really structured way in a more of a website feel. And we could also embed lots of other features into the portal, including how-to guides, contact us pages, and they could highlight the favorites, and there's loads of extra features that have been built into the portal to make it really accessible. And that's been one of the biggest selling points of the relaunch, is going live with this portal to make it a lot easier, because the feedback is that they just couldn't use the server very easily, and it wasn't very obvious what they should be accessing, whereas in the portal we've got the opportunity to really dish it up to them in a really accessible way. So that's been, and it's gone down really well. As part of this technology and governance process, we've also got a new review process, looking at everything that's being built and making sure that we're reviewing that constantly. We've got a quality assurance process, again, to make sure that we're not publishing anything that we shouldn't be publishing. It's all kind of been approved kind of by more people than singly. And we've got a new kind of dashboard development process. We've got a new permissions model, not massively different from the old one, but there is elements where we've gone to user level permissions, so it knows who you are when you log on, and it'll basically only give you your team's data from a manager's point of view, rather than access to lots of stuff. So we've really kind of worked on our permission model and made it a lot more streamlined. And we're trying to push up access to metadata. So we're still on a journey with this. There's still lots more to do as an improvement project. But one of the things we've done is share something called the Integrated Service Directory, which is a view of how we link all our systems together. So every service in our trust has got a unique identifier, and we are getting data from all different systems, and they've got slightly different naming conventions. So we've got a metadata in the middle that holds that together, so we can get an integrated view. So if teams are called different names on different systems, we're still seeing one, and that is a way of governance. But one of the challenges of that is around governing it and people owning it. So as teams change, the structure around it wasn't changing, so it would appear in the wrong network or division. So we've published a dashboard and a process so people can view the ISD data and make sure their team's in the right place in the structure, and then they can do something about it. So it tells them exactly what's going on. So if there are data quality challenges with that data, then they can do something about it, so they get to own it. So that's some of the elements of the technology and governance stuff that we've done. From a dashboard analysis area, we have implemented a new pro forma for dashboard development. We've been really clear about making sure that when dashboards are requested, that we understand exactly what value they're going to add, and also what level of the organization they're going to sit. So we've got different tiers and levels of management in the organization. So whereabouts will this dashboard go, and which other dashboards does it link to? So being really clear about when we're being asked for dashboards, what is it going to be doing and why we're going to use it? Because we've obviously got to over 400 dashboards. There is quite a few duplicates, and we seem to build dashboards to meet every requirement, but it's not then always used. So we want to be really clear about making sure all our dashboards had a return on investment and they had an outcome that's associated with it, so that we can review that and put a priority against it as well. We've got a new dashboard style guide that we have now developed in partnership with InterWorks, and supported us with that. So we've kind of improved the way that our dashboards look and feel, and gone with a really slick looking process. So we've built some new dashboards with that style guide, and now revisiting all our old ones, but it's really a lot more accessible, and we're sticking to some framework, which is really good for the developers, so they don't have to overthink their design for the dashboards. We've got new leadership dashboards. So in terms of, we've got a new leadership structure in the organisation, so we make sure those dashboards go to the right meetings at the right times and to the right people. So we're starting to build dashboards for the different levels of the organisation. So we do have that clear kind of team to board view, and the right levels of managers are using dashboards that will help them do their job, and which is really clear, really important in terms of the engagement that we want with our senior managers. We're also implementing product owners. So we're very early on in this stage, but trying to put a product owner against a dashboard that also liaises with all their stakeholders, obviously lots of other users, rather than just anyone kind of going, oh, can we have a quick change to this dashboard and can I have an extra field in that? There's a product owner that will manage that decision, so that it's not just kind of the dashboards aren't growing and growing with number of filters just to meet everyone's requirements. They're fully owned and we're working in partnership. So that's part of the dashboard analysis and making sure that everything therefore is efficient and accessible. I'm really thinking about the way that we build dashboards. So we have something called Connect and Collaborate. So when the analysts and the developers are building stuff, they come together, kind of share ideas and kind of get a bit of a sign off before we even get to sign off. So they've kind of got feedback and we're working in collaboration to get the best possible product we can. In terms of skills, we've implemented a new professional development framework that is loosely based on Fee Gordon's Rookie to Rockstar framework that we kind of looked at implementing a few years back, and we started to take elements of that into the team, but kind of made it slightly more professional based and linked it to the certifications and also linked it to lots more work-based practice rather than it being about kind of external challenges like Makeover Monday and that, actually getting them to think that whilst you're doing a dashboard internally for someone, where does that fit on the framework? What skills have you learned as part of that? And really being able to kind of portfolio their development so they can really see what level they're at. They've been doing a lot of training and working through the professional framework as analysts and can really see now what level they're at. And the confidence has grown and they've got a portfolio growing and they can really appreciate that the support we're giving them to make sure they develop in the right way so that we're delivering the best dashboards we can and the best analysis. From a data consumers and our decision makers and our users, we are implementing Tableau skills badges. Again, to make sure they recognise the skills that they need to have and how they get them. So looking at Tableau champions and making sure they understand the ethos of using data and they support other people and they've got the right skills to support people. So understanding Tableau really well and having some data literacy skills. We've got a data literacy badge that we want everyone to have in the organisation. We've also got the product owner that we talked about in terms of product owner, and then a super user who will get extra functionality and extra ability at some point to be able to build and curate their own dashboards. So we're rolling out these badges. We've started off with a Tableau champion. We have only relaunched in the last 7 weeks. So we started off small just to kind of test out the process. Again, that training and then packages are built into the portal. So everything's in one place for people to access really easily. So we've got lots of champions already. I think we're up to 39 champions and we've only been relaunched about 7 weeks, I think. So that's been really good as well. And then badges have gone down really well. In terms of the promotion that we did ahead of the relaunch, that was the bit that people got excited about. Everyone loves a badge. And they get to put them on the bottom of their email so that other people know and recognise them as champions or product owners. So really kind of promoting their skills so that our Tableau users aren't always relying on coming centrally for support from our team. And they're actually going to their champions to get support as well. So that's been really good. In terms of engagement, again, we had to rethink about the way that we were engaging with people and making sure people understood what was going on. One of the things that we weren't doing very well, to be totally honest, was telling people when we've got new dashboards published or whether there was things going on or whether there was upgrades or whether there's things they should be accessing. So we wanted to really ramp that up and really consider how we make sure that people do engage. So we wanted to implement a Tableau community internally. And one of the ways of doing that was the Tableau champions. So as we've got more and more champions, we're now recognising that, bringing that community together. So we've got a new Tableau champions user group and we've got our first user group meeting next week. And we're going to kind of take the similar concept to our normal Tableau tugs like these ones in terms of people kind of bringing show and tell as well as kind of updates around the project and the improvements and anything kind of changing in Tableau. We're going to get users to come along and go, this is how I use Tableau. This is what I do in my role. So really excited about kind of implementing them. In terms of the relaunch, so we relaunched with the portal on the 26th of April, and we had a Tableau week to really celebrate Tableau relaunch in pen and care, reminding people about what such a good technology is and how more accessible data is than it was 5 years ago. So we had a Tableau week with lots going on, lots of extra virtual sessions and support sessions. We had lots of promotion, lots of meetings, and we had competitions where people got opportunities to win some swag and stuff like that. We've implemented as well some new virtual training and support so that people can come on and book on sessions. So we've always had fortnightly sessions where people could drop into actual physical sessions to get training and support, but they weren't always accessible. Now that I suppose we've moved into this virtual world, it's made it a lot easier to do. So we're starting to have virtual training sessions for different levels of our users to support them, as well as bespoke sessions if people need it, and that we go out to deliver them. We've got built-in how-to guides. So in the portal now, there's lots of videos to show people how to save their favorites, how to create custom views, and we're going to grow them. Again, that was something we didn't have in the old Tableau server, so people sometimes struggled with understanding how to get the most out of Tableau. So we're building up our how-to guides in there, and there's also support directly in the portal. So we're starting soon. We're hoping that once we build new dashboards, we put kind of a user guide that pops up in the portal to help people understand what the dashboard is trying to do, so people kind of get that immediate support in terms of being able to use it. There's also alerts built into the portal to tell people if we've got any problems with our data and our extracts, so that we don't have to rely on an email communication that they might not check their emails. It's built into the portal and it flashes up good and bad news sometimes to tell people exactly what's going on with the portal and Tableau. So that's been great. And we've started to implement a monthly newsletter. So we've just released our second one to update people about what's going on with Tableau, remind them about the user support, celebrate the champions and the users now, when people have access to stuff. And we also have a user of the month to really kind of, again, kind of celebrate how they're using Tableau and get people to understand exactly the benefits of it. So in a nutshell, the revitalization, there's been a lot of work going in. There's still loads more. We're very early on in the improvement journey of Tableau. But so far, we have got a new user-friendly portal. We've got more collaborative developments with our users. We've got more intuitive dashboards with our style guides. We've got new core dashboards that help that real kind of making sure that people know exactly what they should be using as well. We've opened up some more dashboards that are kind of trust-wide, so people don't have limited access to just a couple of things. They can see some overarching reports that really help them understand what's going on. We've got dashboard recommendations built into the portal, so they flash up and tell people what's going on. We've got the virtual drop-in sessions and the bookable clinics. We're building in guidance and the how-to guides, and we're starting to build up a data dictionary, so they're going to be built into our report, so people know exactly what they're looking at and what the KPIs are trying to tell them. We've got, we're aiming and we're starting to get more transparent metadata, as well as kind of data dictionary, being really open around the kind of structure behind Tableau, like the integrated service director that I mentioned before. Make sure people are aware of that, and if there are problems, and sometimes it's to do with that, and then we need their help to get involved to make it right. We've also got the skills badges that, again, as I said, has gone down really well, and we're really driving a new Tableau community, which is therefore driving a data-informed culture. I suppose one of the things running alongside this revitalized Tableau relaunch and improvement project is a new data analytics strategy. So the Trust has just approved a new strategy to drive our data-driven ambition in pen and care forward, and this is a really key part of that. It's not everything, but it's about getting the right foundation in place to allow us to kind of optimize the way that we use data in pen and care. And the vision for the strategy is about making data integral into everybody's roles. So it's kind of like the first thing they do in the morning, rather than just opening up their emails, they're also opening up Tableau and checking the situational reports and keeping an eye on what's happening. So they're not kind of relying on kind of conversations and phone calls and meetings to find out what's going on. At every level, they've kind of got a shared knowledge. So that data strategy is really important, but this project's been underpinning exactly how that will move forward. And in summary, the feedback so far, 7 weeks in, has been pretty amazing. So people have loved the portal as kind of the first obvious thing that's happened. They've really welcomed that kind of change and the way that we're presenting dashboards and the way that everything's built into the portal. So I think that's the obvious feedback so far. We're going to do some formal feedback in a couple of months, and we're starting to look at the benefits realization. So we'd identified a number of outcomes that we wanted to achieve by the end of the improvement project, or at certain milestones, to make sure this is really adding value. We did get investment in terms of the upgrade and the portal, and we want to be able to keep the portal going forward. So we need that refunding. So we nearly need to justify that. It makes a massive difference compared to just serving up the server directly to our Tableau users. So far, so good. And as I said, it's underpinning the Tableau strategy. And it's also kind of re-motivated the team. Now we've got kind of a new shiny Tableau to play with, both from a desktop point of view, the server and the portal. It's always kind of exciting to have new technology. So I think the team have all come together really well. It was probably 6 weeks worth of hard work alongside kind of business as usual demand and lots of other stuff going on, and a real push at the end. When I wasn't sure we were actually going live on the day we'd planned, because there was a few technical challenges, but it's been a massive team effort, and but well worth it. The feedback has been fab, and it's gone down so well. So thank you for listening. I am on Twitter if you want to follow me, if you want to get in touch, or if you want to read my blogs. I've got a couple of blogs about random stuff, but always reach out. I'm always up for a chat about Tableau. If people want to talk Tableau and the portal and the improvement project, please feel free. I think I'm done, well ahead of time. Hope it wasn't too fast.
That's good, because we have lots of questions in the Q&A.
Cool. Let me stop sharing my screen.
So let's see here. First question for you, Ella. How do you assign the badges?
So on the portal, there is an intro video that they can watch and decide whether they want a badge. And then there is, for the champions badge, which is what we've done so far, there is a training video around being a champion and what that means, as well as data literacy training. So they take the training, then we've got kind of a basic assessment, and literally it's 10 questions just to kind of back up that they are committed to being a champion and they understand the kind of data literacy stuff and Tableau skills. They submit that, and then we send them the virtual badges. So they get, as a champion, they get both the champion badge and the data literacy badge, and then they can put them on their email. So training and assessment, but very straightforward, because we want to encourage champions and it's not supposed to be too challenging.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea to keep the users engaged.
Yeah.
Another person wants to know, how many employees might you have working in Tableau that can maintain and upkeep 400 dashboards?
Probably not enough. No, it's never enough, is it really? So we've got, I think there's 6 people kind of maximum to support the dashboards. Yes, really, there's probably only 3 or 4 that are actually full-time doing Tableau, as well as going out and engaging with services. So I guess everyone does a bit of everything, but yeah, maximum of 6 people really, and a few extra people in the department that can support dashboards. So not a massive team. Hoping that it might grow in the future, but who knows?
Okay. Can you elaborate a bit on the Tableau portal? Is it a custom built portal that you developed internally? Did you embed things into it, or is this like a Tableau feature?
So we bought it. It's called the Interworks Curator. So the company Interworks, which is a partner of Tableau, have built this. They've built the portal, and it's custom built for Tableau. So it's I suppose customizable, so you can brand it, but it's got lots of features in there that kind of jazz up your Tableau environment, and it kind of works a bit like a website, but it's something you can buy and then just stick on just point it at the Tableau server, and then you can brand it and add in lots of content. So as well as kind of linking all your dashboards in and selecting what features you want to kind of turn on, there's lots of extra features as well that the portal gives you, or curator gives you, sorry, and then you can add loads of your own content in terms of pages and videos and everything like that. So yeah, if you want to find out more, then if you have a look on the Interworks website, you should be able to find out more about the curator.
And that's Interworks, correct?
Interworks, yeah.
Yep, okay. A few people are asking if you can share your style guide.
Ooh, yeah, maybe. Yes, of course we can.
Okay. Probably, I guess the best way of sharing that would be to put it on our Tableau Healthcare User Group community site. Yeah, okay.
No problem.
And how are you handling the data dictionaries? Is that something that you're doing inside Tableau or outside of Tableau?
So we've got kind of a temporary measure where we're just doing a very basic kind of definitions in some of the dashboards, but we are currently building something called a metrics database that kind of takes a snapshot of all our metrics, all our kind of key KPIs and metrics for the organization. So there's hundreds of them, and in that database we've got definitions of them, which we will then make available in a Tableau dashboard. So it's built in a database within the data warehouse, and then we'll push it through to show people. And then the idea is that hopefully then they can search and check what metrics are available and how the definition is, and then we'll link dashboards to the definitions and make them kind of linked together.
Okay.
So.
And there are a couple other questions. I think we can take a couple more. Okay. I think you answered how you're handling the data dictionary and how users will access that. So we're gonna skip that one. What challenges, opportunities, and lessons did you find that are unique to health services as it relates to putting together the portal, I imagine?
The challenges, yeah, numerous. I think in terms of, I suppose, where we've come from and where we are now, there's so much that I suppose I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years. And I guess what we're trying to put in is some extra controls in terms of kind of getting that engagement and having the time to do it in the department that's really busy kind of with the old stuff and with demand coming in. It's always difficult to do improvement projects. And I suppose for me, the benefits doing improvement projects is to help streamline and reduce some of that burden and some of the feedback we're getting. So you kind of just have to kind of make a stop. So a lot of the stuff that we have done over the last kind of 6 weeks, it wasn't the 6 week prior to the relaunch. And to be fair, there was quite a lot of build up, a bit longer than that, kind of dipped in and out of the projects. I suppose what we've used is kind of agile project management methodology to kind of do kind of short sprints to really get the team to collaborate, come together, get some stuff done for the improvement project. So we're really kind of making sure we're using our time in the best possible way, and we're really clear about that. So making sure that if we've got a sprint put aside for a Thursday, there's someone else kind of managing that demand outside of that sprint, and we really help the team to focus. So it kind of pushing back on that demand. But I think one of the things we have done is promote that it was happening. So when people kind of came saying, can we have this, can we have that? I said, actually, we're trying to focus on this. If you kind of give us a couple of months just to do this. So I suppose it's managing demand in terms of the challenge, in terms of balancing up and improvements with just general demand. I think some of the other challenges have been technology, which is a massive upgrade, and how we then rationalize all the reports. There's been a lot of work that's gone into kind of re-looking at everything and then getting used to the new technology, and so both the server and the curator at the same time, and trying to have time to make sure all the team are ready as well. So we've kind of been learning as we go, and even I suppose at go live and now we're still, things are popping up that's not quite working. But I think sometimes you've got to do that to actually see. Nothing can be perfect when you go live, and you learn a lot faster when it is live. So my team are probably, I'm not very risk averse, so I like to see what happens and hope for the best, whereas some of the team were very nervous, but I kind of pushed it along, and nobody's died and nothing bad's happened, but we've learned.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had a very large server upgrade from 10.5 to 2020.4. That was a lot in 6 weeks, short amount of time you had. So if you wouldn't mind, you can probably pull up the Q&A and type in the answer to some of these other questions. Cool, and we'll go ahead and turn the presentation over to Jonathan.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, Jonathan, I'm gonna give you the magic wand.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for that presentation, Ella. That was really inspiring. And certainly pointed out some things that we can do at Path. So you should be seeing my screen now.
Yep, looks good, Jonathan.
Okay, great. And so I'm Jonathan Drummey. I'm a data visualization specialist at Path, which is an NGO based in the United States. I'm also a Tableau Zen Master and Tableau Forums Ambassador. And I was a previous leader of the healthcare tug, but I was not the first leader. I think that honor goes to Mark Cook. Way back when before me. And then there's been a number of other people involved over the years. So I'm going to be talking about relationships today, and I've got a couple of questions and trying to get some information, and I will paste these into the chat as well, just so they're there. So what version of Tableau are you using right now, and whether or not you've intentionally used the relationships feature? So Tableau introduced the relationships feature back in version 20.2, just over a year ago now. And we've seen, just looking at uptake on that, it's been interesting to see how fast people upgrade to Tableau, and in terms of how much they're know about this feature change or how well Tableau did with this feature change, whether they're aware of it. So, yep. All right, so I'm seeing some answers flow through, and maybe 50% or more are no's for different reasons. So thanks for helping me out here. So today I'll be doing a little intro of Path, talking about what we're up to, talk more detail about the relationships feature, which is honestly my favorite feature that Tableau has introduced. And you're seeing the pasta here because when Tableau built this feature, they called it the noodle, and another name for this internally was object model. And they took a few years to build this feature and work on it. And it's enabled us to do all sorts of different things at Path. So I'll be talking about some of our use cases. And then for those of you who aren't, and I saw, oh, the noodle thing, I do use that, just go by in the chat. Yeah, that's a perfect example of Tableau rolled out this feature. It's helping us do our work and we don't have to pay attention to it. That said, there are some places where we do. So I'll talk about some considerations for using relationships as well. And then depending on time, dive into additional use cases and Q&A. So talking about Path. So we're all data people here. I thought I'd just throw some numbers at you. So we've got about 1,400 staff. About 60% are located outside the United States. And about 40 odd offices globally. And at any time, we're working on over 200 different projects. Our budget is in the range of $300 million US. We have a 32 core Tableau server with over 200 desktop users. And the most important number is that we're touching about 150 million lives directly every year with our work. And so our work includes vaccines, diagnostics, drugs, devices, and health systems. So for example, part of our work that was interrupted by COVID was supporting polio eradication. And so polio vaccines, also testing for vaccine-derived polio, for example, which is one of the big things that needs to be done to finish eradicating polio. With COVID, we had a big switch in our work to a lot of different things with COVID, some new dashboards and stuff, and I'll show you. And also on the diagnostic side, we've been doing a lot with looking at what diagnostics are available in different parts of the world, and also with COVID variants, helping our partner countries understand what diagnostics are actually detect different variants of COVID, because they're not all perfect at doing that. And then, so a couple examples of this. We're a grantor of the United States President's Malaria Initiative, which is one of the largest foreign aid programs from the United States. It's about $1 billion US every year. And as part of that, we created the best practices guide for data visualization, and we're using, so it's using Tableau, Excel, other tools. These visualizations here were built using Tableau and relationships, and it's sort of dashboards in that. So that's a recent effort. On the, with COVID, we're part of a coalition called the Every Breath Counts Coalition, and we built a dashboard to help talk about the need for medical oxygen for COVID-19 and just how much that is physically, but also how much is the cost to be able to meet that need over time. So this is yesterday's data as we're out seeking grants from funders for that. And with that work, that's one area where we've gotten a lot of publicity, and news organizations like the BBC taking our data and creating their own visualizations on it, the Financial Times, Anthony Fauci presenting on our work with this. So it's been just a lot of effort to do data wrangling and put the data out there for the world. So giving you a sense of what we do, and this visualization, we're also using relationships in building that. So on the whole, our mission is about eliminating health inequities across the world. And as we're looking at that, one of the things that we can look at as a health inequity in this day and age is around data, that healthcare workers don't have access to data products that are going to help them do their work. They don't have access to the tools necessarily to build that. And then there's the capacity strengthening to teach them how to work with the tools and build more with that. So one of the things that we've been working on during COVID, with the support of Tableau and other organizations like Alteryx and Mapbox, Excel, and Microsoft, is to create a platform such that we can use our Tableau infrastructure and make that available to other nonprofits and NGOs. And that's something that has been a piece for me of seeing all these organizations that could really use the power of a tool like Tableau, but then can't afford it. So this is something we're opening up to public health nonprofits to work with us on. So now I'm going to switch from kind of the path overview and talk about more of my work and dive into relationships. So I got a little Venn diagram of there's working with governed data, and we all know governance is a constant process. So sometimes it's semi-governed. And then there's typical reporting and dashboards work. And then a lot of where I get called in is working on new stuff, which is really kind of how can we make use of new tools and technologies, or even features of existing tools like relationships to support our mission. And continuing with the noodle metaphor, this is kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall sometimes and seeing what sticks. So a lot of what you're going to see in the next bit is coming out of that. So with that, not everybody's using relationships yet. I thought I'd do a little introduction to relationships as a feature. So historically in Tableau, we have a couple of tables, and then we do a physical table join between those tables. And so here's an example join of some case data or incidents or surveillance data, depending on your terminology. And I've got several physical tables here that have joined together. And then the result is a single logical, also called a flat table of all of that. And then we can build views on that and everything, and that's historical Tableau. So Tableau wanted to offer something different and new, and they had some reasons for investing this and making this the new default in working with Tableau. And one of the key things is being able to support more use cases per Tableau data source. So we can answer more different questions with our data with the same data source. Be able to do that with less upfront data preparation. And I'll be showing some examples of this. Being able to handle missing data and data at different grains, which is something that we often run into in public health work. Being able to work with larger data sets more easily, because we're not having to generate that flat table of all of the results of all of our joins at once. And then this other place competitively where in the marketplace, other data visualization tools like Qlik and Power BI and so on had more data modeling capability in them, and Tableau needed to build that as well. But they did that with a Tableau kind of way of doing it. So with relationships, we still have all of our physical table joins and everything we can do. So there was nothing taken away. In fact, when you upgrade from a data source or a workbook that was using the old joins, those are all preserved when you upgrade into the new ones. So we're keeping everything we had, and now we have this orange noodle that shows up, and I'll do a demo in a second here, and relationships. So that set of physical table joins becomes a logical table, And we can have multiple logical tables as shown here. And then the logical tables are related as needed in each view while we're keeping the level of detail of each logical table. There's a lot of words there, and I'm going to take a little time to go through them. But now let's do a demo. So I'm going to switch over here to Tableau. And I have a data source of made up data from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have different facilities in this data set. And I'll just show these data sources. So here's my data. So here's my facilities. I have data for each facility and month. I've got a facility population field in my data, and we can see, oh, that's replicated for every row. And in here, this is Tableau 21.1 I'm running here. So I have to open up my logical table to see my join. There's my population data. Just to look at this population data, I have a row for each facility with that population for each facility. And then when I do my join and I get that flat table, I'm also seeing that replication of those population values across all of my data. So when we're in this place and I want to do something like an incidence calculation, I have to first of all recognize this, and then B, I have to account for this in my data. So one thing that happens here is these facility population numbers, if I right click and do a view data and look at the full data, are over counting my facility population. So because that's being right, I want to work with a number of 5,217, not 213,000. So to do that, historically in Tableau, we build out level of detail expressions. And one of the new features in Tableau is we can do level of detail expressions kind of point and click. We don't have to know so much. So just to kind of demo this feature, so I can have my positive measure, sorry, not my positive, my population measure. And then I can take my facility dimension. Oops, I didn't do the click right. And then right click and create. And we have this new option in the create menu for an LOD calculation. And then here, I'm just going to use, instead of sum, I'm going to use max. So I'm going to get the maximum value of population for each facility and remove that issue. So here's my facility population LOD. And then I can drag this out. And now I'm seeing that 5,217 that I expected. And then from there, I can go on and build out and use my positive and build out an incidence per 1,000 calculation and know my numbers are right. So this is something for me, and somebody just wants to generate an incidence calculation. They want to do sum of positive divided by sum of my facility population and have it work. And instead, in training, I've had to teach people, okay, we've got to learn about joins. We have to learn about replication. We have to learn about level of detail expressions. And that's a lot for people to learn and try to understand right away. So now let's go to relationships. So just to look at the data here. So I've got my data as one table. And when I'm looking at the data grid here, this is just the original data set. And then when I click on population, I'm just looking at my population data. So one of the things with the relationships is we're deferring those joins until runtime. And then the relationship is established through the noodle. So as I'm moving this around, instead of seeing straight lines, I'm seeing the orange noodle. And then on my relationship, I've said, I want to relate at the level of facility. So now in my workbook here, here's my facility data, here's my facility population, just to show those are matched. If I drag out my facility population that's in my data, I get all that replication. But if I drag out my facility population from my population data, I'm seeing those accurate numbers. So relationships is querying my logical table of my population data at the level of that logical table. And so it's preserving that level of detail. And then my incidence per 1,000 calculation can just be sum of positive divided by my sum of facility population times 1,000 and be exactly what I want. So no, don't have to know about joins and replication and right level of detail expressions to get what I need. So that's the core piece of relationships here. And just to show this kind of in practice, here's one of our data source where we have 5 different connections. We've got multiple logical tables here. Inside the expense actuals table are joined 7 different tables coming from box files or Excel files on Box and Salesforce and SQL Server and so on. So this relationship is processed as needed in each view. And just to talk about that a little bit more, if we have a view with a single logical table, Tableau's only querying that logical table. It's not querying that entire flat table or doing the join. It's only needing what's in that table. So for example, going back to Tableau here, I built a view that's just using a couple of fields from my data logical table. So this query is only going to hit my data table and not my population data. And then I can look at my facility, my population data here, which only has 153 rows in it, entirely separately. So this is one of the things, it's getting us some of the advantages of Tableau's data blending technology, except I have everything in one data source that I can relate on the fly instead of having multiple data sources and dealing with some of the extra complexities that data blending can add. So in that way, I just mentioned that bit here. So it's talking about relation as needed, and then keeping the level of detail of each logical table in this. Going back to my demo here, so with the relationships, we're keeping that population level of detail as we're working with this data, and we're working with the original data set at the level of facilities a dimension. But if I want to drag out month here as year, then Tableau's now working with this data at the level of facility and year, but my population data is still staying at the level of facility. So we're able to work with multiple grains of data. So in terms of how Tableau is doing that, because some people wonder why, when we're using fields from multiple logical tables, Tableau is going to query our logical table A based on the dimensions from A in the view and our relationships keys. And then it's going to query B based on the dimensions from B and our relationships keys. And then it'll join those results together using our relationships keys and finish applying all our filters. And then render our view. So this, so if all of these connections for our logical tables A and B, it's all one source, then this can all be done, number 1 and number 2 here, and the join and everything, all in one query. So it can still be efficient. So Tableau is taking all of their learning from building out federated data sources and level of detail expressions and data blending and so on to build this new technology for us. So that's keeping the level of detail of each logical table. Now, one of the things that comes up for people is like, okay, well, how does Tableau know what relation to do? So what is this related word here? And the people who particularly answer that question are the people who come from more of a SQL background, who are used to creating joins and so on. And a key point here is that relationships as a feature are not joins. They will use joins in generating queries to the database, but it really helps to think of them as not joins. and they aren't data blends either. They are a new way to connect data sources. So it really helps to think of them as this new thing to connect data sources and get used to how relationships work. So one of the ways I've seen that in action as we're seeing more adoption and uptake at Path is people want to know, okay, in that noodle, what's my join type? Or can I see the flat table of this as I'm connecting this so I can validate the data and so on? And the thing to keep in mind is that relationships are deferring that join until we're generating the view. So there isn't a flat table anymore. If we want to see that, we need to build a view to do that right now. Also within relationships, marks cards can have different levels of detail. And I'm going to show some examples of where we take advantage of that and ultimately make different relationships queries. So a couple of things to keep in mind about relationships. Measures are always kept. So in this way, if I have a measure from A and some dimensions from B, I'm not going to lose any values from A. We're going to get an outer join effect from that, and vice versa with B going to A. If we have dimension-only visualizations, though, so there's no measures in the visualization, Tableau is going to effectively do an inner join. It's only going to keep those matching values from our relationships keys. So that's kind of talking about this relationship piece. And this thing about using relationships, if you're really thinking, I need a flat table to understand this, then you can still do physical joins with inside a logical table. So you haven't lost any functionality or capability to do that. And there's certainly times that I need to do that just because it makes a lot more sense. So now let's dive into some more use cases. So one of the analyses that we recently did was looking at our bid and proposal data. So a little kind of flow chart here. So we have the different populations that we're serving with our work. And then there's organizations, there's Path, and we typically work with ministries of health and partner with other non-governmental organizations to meet the needs of those populations. And we're working in developing areas and we need grantors to fund that. And the grants might be anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of millions of dollars. And there are requests for proposal that may take days or weeks or months of time to create that. And so we need to appropriately budget and handle that and understand, are we making the most effective use of our grant money? And so we had an analysis with a number of questions that needed to look at several years of data, multiple processes and systems. So one of them was kind of, where does this bid and proposal money go? We're investing bid and proposal dollars into opportunities that we don't win, or we keep on pursuing funders that we don't win, or we invest too much in smaller opportunities when we really we'd be better off going after larger awards, and so on. So for this, we ended up building out this data source. I could spend hours and hours going into all the details of it, but the thing I want to highlight here is we've got multiple raw data sources that we're working with, and we've got a variety of different relationships. So I've highlighted each one. So this one's 1 to 0 or many, 1 to many, 0 or 1 to many, and then assorted other ones that we're working with. So to build a flat table out of this, my rough estimate would be we'd probably be approaching 1 trillion records. And instead, the extract of this is 4.2 megabytes in size, which is ridiculously small. I don't understand how Tableau pulls that off. And so being able to build this out was huge for us, because to try to create this as an analysis, it would have taken me weeks. And instead, this was built out in hours over the course of a few days. And on the fly, we were like, okay, well, we need to look at this data, or we need to slice it by that data, and to be able to add a logical table or edit one of our logical tables and use it was just tremendous. And to solve a lot of data quality issues and so on in the data was huge for us. So this is something that I really don't know would have been possible without relationships. And just to show kind of what we did with it, we built out a ton of different views on it. And I'm going to show one of them that we shared. I've blurred a lot of the stuff on here just for privacy. The point that I want to make on this crosstab is that the darker colors that we see in the crosstab mean whatever that variable is bigger. And so one of the things we're able to look at across our expected award ranges is looking at these smaller awards. Those actually have our highest win rate. And based on looking at the color here, they also have our lowest B&P spend. So that myth we were looking at of we spend too much on smaller awards, we're able to look at this and say, actually, we've got a really high win rate here and we're not spending much money on that. And so then that is able to change that question with the data into, okay, well, what's an appropriate amount of spend? Or are the win rates in the first place what we really want? And so on. And so we can get to a deeper level of questions with this as we're working with a data set that is coming from a dozen plus different tables here, all in one view. So that was really big, and we're continuing on to evolve and do more with this one. So when I think of Tableau projects, I think of different ways that we get a win. So one of them is getting that gorgeous or eye-catching view, and I would not call this gorgeous or eye-catching at all. However, when it comes to being able to put all this different data in a single view, to be able to answer questions faster, to be able to get to answering newer, different, deeper questions, relationships really helps us with that. So I asked some colleagues for some quotes. So Emily said, I barely use joins now. Doug said, Tableau relationships allow for much more seamless and flexible thought. And Wendy shared one of her dashboards that had, I looked at this and was kind of like, oh my God, you did what? But it's working for her. And the big win for her is she doesn't have to compute everything, just highlighting this in R or Alteryx in order to get the results that she's needing. So this is saving her time and making working with the data easier for her. That said, there's also a caution here. So here's that same data source, and here's that data source in the main window in Tableau were filtered for the district fields. And we can see on here, there's a ton of different district fields. And one of the things with relationships right now is that it's pretty easy to accidentally drag out the wrong field. So when we look at district, there's sheet 11, district sheet 11, which is different spelling. There's district sheet 1, easy to miss. And then when we do that, we can end up with either incorrect or undesired values. Or potentially we could end up with a huge query where Tableau is trying to resolve all of our relationships at once in building view, and that's trashing our performance. So some things about using relationships: make an effort to hide the fields that aren't necessary for your analysis. Rename fields so it's really obvious what you're going to do. In this case, this view is by those logical tables. So maybe take some time and build out folders with all that renaming so it can be really clear what you need to drag out for different kinds of analysis. And in that way, sometimes using relationships is a little slower to get going with than if I put everything in a flat table just so I can make sure I'm using the right fields. On the other hand, there's all the time saved from that later on in building out views and calculations and so on. So with relationships, Tableau introduced this last year with 2020.2. They added relationship calculations, non-equal operators and performance improvements in 2020.3. And in 2020.1, they've continued making performance improvements. So there's been an evolution. And then from talking with Tableau developers, I know Tableau is thinking about these things. I am not a Tableau staff person, so I have no promises about time and delivery on this. One of them is that they are continuing to fix bugs and different edge cases that show up in relationships, and also continuing to want to improve performance on relationships, because they've just opened up a whole new world of creating data sources. So I've got data sources with hundreds of fields in them now, and many tables, and that are things I just never would have tried to do in Tableau before as a data source. And so Tableau is seeing that, and they're working on handling those things. Filtering, we can do data source filtering. In Tableau, it'd be really great to do logical table filtering. So I know that's something they're thinking about. And then they're also working on making relationships easier to validate and easier to use. So some of those things like what I just showed with dragging out the wrong field are less likely to happen. So in thinking about us all as people working in healthcare and different use cases, I'm particularly talking about public health here in relationships, kind of when do we use relationships, don't we? So this is my advice for what it's worth. So if you have an existing data pipeline that's building out a data source and you're building Tableau views on it, you don't have to do anything with relationships. And that's the if it ain't broke, don't fix it principle here. Let's say you're working with case or surveillance data. And then you have other data sets you need. So for us, commonly we have surveillance data from one source, spatial data from another source, population data from somewhere else. And this is a really great place for relationships. And I showed an example of that from Wendy, where that was entomological surveillance data. When we've got more complex surveillance data and we're working with numerators and denominators at different levels of detail, that's one area where for me it depends, particularly with who are the users using this. And in some cases we found for them, if they're still in kind of the flat table model, mental model, then having a single table might be easier for them to use that. So patient level data in multiple tables. So let's say we have patients in one table with their demographic information. We have their list of encounters or visits in another table. We have labs in another table, vitals in yet another table. We can relate all of those together and work with them as we need to. So this is, for me, kind of a key use case for relationships. Also with survey data, in getting that survey data kind of just so, using Steve Wexler's term, we can create wide data that has our one record per respondent, which is kind of the typical way we download it out of survey tools, and then do that pivot to our tall data with one record per response. And so we have all of our wide data variables to use for slicing our tall data that we're summing up and averaging and so on. And we can do all that in one data source with relationships. And that's something that we did a big diversity, equity, and inclusion survey. And that was one of this past year. And in the analysis of that, that was one of the things we used relationships for with that. I'm going to slap a big old caveat on this around performance, and I'll explain why. So going back to a little cartoon of relationships here, where relationships are computed at runtime, if our two logical tables are in different connections, then like one's in a SQL Server database and one is in an XSL database that we have, for example, then Tableau is going to have to query the SQL Server data, query the XSL data, and then do that join together, relate those together when it's rendering the view. So that can cause some performance issues just to move all of those query results into Tableau to do that join. And then there's this question of, well, how many things are we relating? So how big is that list of values we're going to do that with? And if we're getting into millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of things that we want to relate, that's a lot of data to move into Tableau so that Tableau can do that join. So in thinking about relationship performance, if it's not working, consider extracts for doing that. So then we're at least bringing all of that data locally and setting up to do joins within our extracts, potentially switching back to using physical joins in a logical table with level of detail expressions as you need to, and then doing potentially other data prep as necessary for that. So that's a bit on the performance thing. And this is one of the areas where Tableau's continuing to work on ideas on how to optimize this. So for me, I've been diving into relationships. I'm going to take a few more minutes here to go into a few more use cases. And one of the things I've been working on is a podcast that we're calling the Data Sense Maker's Kitchen, with Keith Helfrich, who's a former Tableau ambassador. And some of the things you've seen here or will see in the next couple minutes are going to be in our podcast. We're in production and we'll be releasing our first episodes this summer. So if you want to learn more about relationships, please follow us. And I've got the sign up form for to give us your email address so we can let you know when our first episodes are out. And people keep on mentioning, like, I've got a fancy mic, and that's what I'm using the fancy mic for. So with that, some of the things we've been using for with relationships. So one of the use cases is when we have multiple names for the same thing. So here's a situation where in my data, I've got a company ID that is unique to the company, but then that company name is changed over time in the data. It gets called different things at different times. And we see this all over the place with hand entered data, or facility names are changing over time, and so on. And so with relationships, we can set up a relationship where our filters are using that full list of company names, but our views are built just based on the company ID. And I'll show an example of this right now. So here's that view with the company names for the same thing. And I will show in the data source, here's all of that company data. And then here's my unique list of company names in the data. And then I have my relationship is not on the company name, but instead on the company ID that's unique. So now as I'm filtering in this view, I can pick any or all of my Alpha Corps in here. And I've got Alpha Corp in there. If I get rid of all of them, then that one's out of the list. So, and I just saw Kathy Bridges said, OMG, this would have come in so handy when I discovered there were 2 doctor names for half our IDs. Yes, this is a perfect example of for working with systems where you end up with multiple names for the same thing, for marriages, divorces, other life changes that result in name changes. So just to kind of show how this is working in practice, going back to my PowerPoint here. So we have our company list and our company data, and there's my quick filter, which is based on my company list. And so when I filter for certain companies, that's going to keep that out of this data set, the company list data set. And then the relation is on company ID. There's our noodle. And so it's going to keep all those matching company IDs, company ID 1, company ID 1, and thus build out our view. So being able to like pick multiple diagnoses for patients and see all the labs for patients with that diagnosis. So we're relating across those data sources at the level of the patient. Being able to pick a place name and see all the matching zip or postal codes. Doing market basket analysis is another use case for this. And then a variation on this is one, and I've got a little GIF here that's going to play where we can click on in our data source. We've built out a list of, okay, what are all the states, US states that are touching Montana? And then in one data source, I can click on Montana and then see all the results of those related states. So this kind of what happened around me. And this is the same kind of thing in that for each state, kind of canonical state, we have multiple states that we're interested in, which are all the ones that are adjacent, where we had a separate process that created that data source. So we've been using this for some malaria elimination work in Zambia, where district people at a district level are interested in looking at, okay, what's going on in the districts around me? So there's an adjacency piece of this. Filling in missing data on maps. So we have lots and lots of map data, data we want to put on maps, and we have lots of places where data doesn't exist on a map. So here's another example of this where I've got some data from Canada here. We've got all of the provinces in 2018, but when I filter for 2019, all those northern provinces go away because there's no data for them. And then with relationships, we're able to set up a map where no matter what we filter for, we always see this underlying layer here. And I'm going to show how we did that. And that is, where's my Canada one? Okay, for time, I'm not going to try to bring that up. I will just kind of talk about this for a second. So the thing that we're doing here is we're setting up a relationship not on province between our two data sources, but instead on one equals one. Sorry, I accidentally clicked through here on this. So a relationship that's on 1 equals 1 is going to keep all values from a list of provinces that's all data. And that's showing up on one marks card. And then the other marks card is showing our actual data and is getting the filters being applied. So we can also do this with layers as well, which leads into my next piece here is we often have views where like we're showing all the districts here in Zambia, and then we want to show the province boundaries on top of our districts. And this is something that we couldn't necessarily, or we could do in Tableau sometimes with a dual axis and everything. With map layers now, we're able to have these province boundaries show up here. And this is actually one I can show. So we've got 4 different map layers here, and let me just turn them all off. So this is our underlying district background shapes. And this is set up with one of these 1 equals 1 relationships here. So I just got to wait a second for the relationships to show up. So here's our district background shapes, and our relationship is established on 1 equals 1. So these borders here are always going to show up. Our district borders are always going to show up. And then we have our regular old filled map. So now we can see that underlying layer and then our filled map layer. And then we have another layer on top of that showing places where we were missing data to flag those. And then we have one more layer on top, which is showing us those provincial boundaries on that. So being able to get these more stylized maps has been really great for us and saved us a lot of prep work that we might have done elsewhere. And then also we can do more with labeling with that now and have map labels that are always showing up on top of the data. And then with map layers, we don't have to be using up our dual access to get those labels. And then another use case that we have is we have situations where we always want to show something in the view, but we want to filter for other things. So notice that blue is in the view, but it's not in the quick filter. So when we want to show like a core department, for example, or some major project in addition to everything else, we're able to do that using relationships. And this is, again, using a separate data source for this list of colors, which is independent from the data source we're using to build out the view. And then another example of this is hierarchy filtering. So in this view, we've set up a hierarchy as one logical table, which has our list of values. And then we can pick different things on this. So in this case, I've picked Northern New England and Vermont. So it's showing me all of the Northern New England states because that's the hierarchy. And then I also have Connecticut picked in here. So one way to think about these different options is we're using the hierarchy source effectively as a multi-valued parameter, which is something that Tableau doesn't support yet. And then I'm just going to show this last one and then we'll go to questions. So one of the things that when I started using Tableau, I was asked to look at cohorting patients based on diagnosis as an early use case. So we wanted to see like who had was a smoker and had COPD, or who had COPD and heart failure, or who was a smoker, COPD and heart failure. And in that case, the same patient can show up in multiple cohorts at once. And so I went through all of this crazy stuff with multiple data sources and data blending and everything to build that. And here we're able to build that in one data source. So on this one, what I have in this data source, and this demo is using coffee chain data, is we have our coffee chain data. I happen to have another source of states that I'm using to help build a cohort. And then this table right here is a replicator. This also gets known as a scaffold table or skeleton table in Tableau terms. And we can use this to relate. The join key here has a value of 1 for everything. So I had, so in this case, I pre-populated it with values of 1. So this is our 1 = 1 relationship. And now I'm able to work with my coffee data. So here's my states and here's my sales, and I'm not getting any replication from this at all from doing this because I'm using relationships. But then I can start diving into the relationships. So now my cohort name here is using, I'm just taking my 3 rows from this clipboard data to create 3 different cohorts. And then I have some calculated fields that are appropriately plugging in the data to each cohort, and each cohort is driven by a different set. So for example, my cohort 1 set is 4 states right now with 77,000 in sales. If I add Connecticut, that's now this cohort. And then I can say for my second cohort, let's add Connecticut to that one. And there it is. Whoops, mouse being a little slow here. And add this one into the cohort. And then in my third cohort, I can say, I don't want Connecticut. So this is using the set control that Tableau introduced this past year to drive these different things. We could potentially be doing this with quick filters or parameters or so on, but to be able to dynamically generate cohorts on the fly and do it all in one view is just something I've wanted to do in Tableau since forever, and we're able to do that with relationships now. And then my very last screenshot, this is, I call this my circus tent view. We're actually had some work for COVID for the World Health Organization where we needed to build base maps that were approved by them. And some of what they use is striping on maps in for conflict regions and so on. And so we're able to do that in a data-driven way and then color the different sections differently with maps. And so this was something I'd collaborated on with Sarah Battersby, and she did a blog post on doing this in Tableau. So with that, hopefully gave you some ideas of things you can do with relationships. Inspire you to motivate your organizations to upgrade so you can take advantage of them. And with that, I will take some questions now.
That was awesome. Selfishly, we are upgrading from 2019.4 to 2020.4. And I've been stressing about how I was going to teach our team about relationships. I now know I'm going to get them the link to this recording and use that as a good start.
One thing on that is Tableau, when relationships came out, they had multiple blog posts, updated their training materials for relationships, and also the Tableau feature documentation on relationships is the best I've ever seen for a new feature. And I say that as a former technical writer, so that's a
good to know.
Selfish kind of opinion as well. So, yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we do have a few questions. I'll kind of jump through a couple. One that seemed like I saw a couple that seemed related-ish. Are there any limitations when it comes to grouping, filtering, or sorting data when you're leveraging relationships that you've experienced anyway?
So with grouping, like grouping from different fields and so on, that all works. With sorting, there are some edge cases where, depending on if you have data at different grains, that and or sparse data, your measures that you're using for sorting can end up not returning exactly what you think until you have some understanding of what relationships is doing. So that's been one of those places where people get confused. And one of the things that I push the Tableau devs I talk to about validation, that relationships could be better about explaining what it's doing and not be so much magic behind there. With filtering, the thing to keep in mind is filters in relationships still, they work like filters in data blends in that the filter affects the view. So the filters are not completely independent on each logical table. And I've seen some people sometimes do that. And there's ways, like with some of what I demoed, I'm getting that effect by changing how the relationship works. Yep. So that's what I've noticed. Doing row level filtering is more complicated in relationships than it might be otherwise, and can also have some performance impacts. And that's one of the areas that in talking about performance with the relationships that I know Tableau is working on.
Awesome. And then to that point of the kind of what's going on behind the scenes, I think we had a couple questions around effectively what happens if somebody were to click view full data, and yeah, what that looks like.
Well, let me show that. So here's a view I built with relationships. So when I do view data, the summary tab is the same old summary tab showing my selected marks. And then we have two separate data tabs, one for each lot. So this is showing the rows from my data logical table that went into this measure or the selected mark. And then the population is showing the one row from population that went into that selected mark. So I see there was a question just posted about, will view underlying data show me the flat table, if you will, at that point. It is not, that view data right now is not showing that flat table of this joined to this. Because that's not actually what Tableau did. In essence, what Tableau did in this case to build out, in building out this mark, is it summed up all of these rows together. That was the result. That was, so the flat table, the results of Tableau's join was the sum of all of these facility populations in one mark joined with this one mark.
Awesome. And then do one more kind of a quick question and then into another maybe larger question from Kathy. One feature that I know you highlighted kind of to set the stage for why we leverage relationships was the automatic LOD. Do you know off the top of your head what version that feature was introduced? I know that's a on the spot question that might be able to do a quick search. But.
Tableau.com. I want to say it was 21.1 maybe.
I think it's relatively recent.
Oh yeah. Let's see here. V21.1. New features. I regularly have to go back to this to remember. So yeah, if you look on it,
I was trying to find it too, and I looked in 2020.2.3.4. I forgot there's a 2021.1.
2021.1. Quick LODs. Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
And then, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, somebody asked, can you use multiple fields to join in a relationship? Yes.
And that was not on the first time they released it, but a later version. They
nope, that was right away. You could do that.
Oh, you could do that right away.
So I can, so here I've set up this relationship. I can add more fields. Awesome. So if I need to join on country and country, I can do that too.
Cool. And then even the edit calculation too.
Yeah, and then the edit calculation was added in 2020.3.
That's it. Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. And then make sure there's maybe one more. So this was a specific question from Kathy. And she prefaced it by saying it sounds complex, but she's hoping you'll understand it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Can you use relationship or the combination of the automatic LOD features when you need the per K to be annualized? For example, factoring in months displayed and number of days in those months for something like admits per K.
So for that, my answer is it depends. And on kind of what the incoming data looks like. And the other thing I think about with that is it can also run into performance issues as well if there's a lot of data. So I've certainly done that with having to use relationships with level of detail expressions that are crossing the different logical tables. We can totally do that. The other thing that I've done is I've just added, I had one case that was sort of similar where I was looking at days worked by people and also their expected days worked at an annual basis and at a monthly basis and so on. And the thing that I found was easier for me to do rather than deal with level of detail expressions and potential impacts from filtering and stuff like that, because level of detail expressions are subject to filters. It was easier to just build a couple of other tables where I had my data aggregated to the level I needed it at. So I had an annual target days for my staff, and I had an monthly target days for my staff, and I just related that in. And that way, in building out the, like, okay, how many days did you work versus your target and so on, everything just worked from there. And then if I had to sum, if I had my monthly target days and we're showing 5 months in the view, it would automatically add up those 5 months.
Well, I do know there were a couple other questions, but I think we touched on a lot today with it, and I really do appreciate the time both from you, Jonathan, and Ella earlier as well. Nicole, any last notes before we wrap up today's session?
I think that, you know, the video will be available on the Tableau YouTube channel where all their videos are posted. That'll probably be like within the next, you know, couple days or so. And Ella or Jonathan, if you want to share your PowerPoint slides or any information, I guess just post them on the Tableau community site that we have. And everyone who uses Twitter or isn't on Twitter, you know, follow us. We're at HealthTug, and you can learn about, you know, what's upcoming. And we're always looking for speakers. So reach out to us, please, if you're interested in speaking about anything that's Tableau related. I don't really have anything else.
And I would add too, if maybe you don't want to speak, but you have topics in mind, please feel free to send that, and then we'll try to find folks that might be able to meet that need. And I thought today did a really good example of showing everywhere that we can cover. We can get very technical. We can talk more of the strategy and approach if there's specific use cases. There's a lot that we're hoping to do with this group. So just seeing that last question, it's at HealthTug. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Beat us to the punch right there for us. We do also have the user group page on the Tableau community site as well, that folks are able to join. But with that, we'll wrap up, and really do appreciate the time. Thank you again to our speakers, and everyone have a good rest of your week, okay?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan and Ella.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks for
See
having
ya.
us. Have
Bye,
a great
guys.
day, everybody.